Thank you very much. Thanks to all of our witnesses for your really excellent testimony. Mr. Scanlon, you hypothesize, because we can't know for sure, that the Biden deepfake had minimal impact, but we can't be certain what the vote would have been but for those calls. And I understand there is an investigation ongoing. The Attorney General is conducting it. It's under New Hampshire law. I assume it's criminal law as well as civil, but there are no federal remedies. In your view, would it be helpful to have criminal penalties under federal law specifically aimed at this kind of deception? And I think it was Mr. Coleman suggested that criminal penalties could be an effective deterrent, but they have to be really more specific and stringent than they are now.
And Mr. Chairman, I have to agree that we truly don't know what the impact was on the New Hampshire presidential primary. We only know that we had a good turnout, and the results were what they were. And we still have an active prosecution going on. The AG in New Hampshire has identified a company or companies that participated, and an individual that is a suspect, and they're moving forward with that. At some point, I believe that there is a federal component to this because it's going to be a national problem. And I'd like to give a shout out to Kate Conley, who works with Jen Easterly at CISA. Kate was in New Hampshire on the day of the presidential primary, and she traveled around to polling places with me to try and get a handle on how big this thing actually was, even though that was difficult to determine. But yes, I think that these things in a national election are going to be generated nationally, whether it's foreign actors or some other malicious circumstance. And I think we need uniformity and the power of federal government to help put the brakes on that. Instances that happen locally, certainly federal government assistance would be helpful, but I think that should remain the prerogative of state law enforcement and the Attorney General.
With assistance from federal authorities where it's appropriate. Let me ask you and the other witnesses, Senator Hawley and I have proposed a framework which includes an independent oversight entity, a set of standards that would be imposed by that entity, a requirement for some licensing before models were deployed, testing to assure that they were safe and effective, just as the FDA reviews drugs to make sure they are safe and effective, and potentially penalties such as we've been discussing, as well as export controls to assure that our national security is protected. I'm assuming, just for the sake of speed, I'm assuming that all of you would agree that some kind of framework like that one makes sense.
I actually have specific thoughts on that framework. I think it's a good start, but I really think it's important that whatever framework we set adopts what's called a defense in-depth approach, right? So we need metadata, watermarking, cryptographic hashing, which is a little complicated, but it's invisible watermarks and a hash database, kind of like NCMEC, AI detection, and AI poisoning. It also needs to cover both the generative AI platforms and the online platforms. We need both of those folks. We can't just say license generative AI companies and leave it at that. Honestly, we need government buy-in, generative AI buy-in, platform buy-in, journalist buy-in, and then detection companies.
And all of those points are encompassed by our framework, particularly the watermarking.
Yeah, I really think watermarking is getting a lot of attention here, and it really doesn't solve that much of a problem. You need cryptographic hashing, invisible watermarking. That's really important.
Mr. Coleman?
Yeah, just to add on to that, and I think just to unpack two things here. We're talking about watermarking and cryptographic hashing, effectively what's called provenance. It's either there or it's not. The challenge with that is it presupposes that everybody's going to follow the same rules. All the bad actors will follow the same rules. And we've seen time and time again, a lot of the applications, whether they're on your phone in the App Store or online, or they're open sourced, they just aren't going to follow the rules. So we can't expect everyone to say, hey, we're going to play nice within this walled garden, when the bad actors, by definition, are not playing by the rules at all. And so, with Reality Defender, we focused on inference. We don't touch any watermarking. We don't touch any personal data. We actually assume we'll never see the ground truth. We'll never even know if it is real or not, which means instead of saying yes or no, we're taking a more measured probabilistic approach. A probability saying maybe we're 95% confident, maybe we're 62% confident. We build that into a larger framework of just one signal among many to make a better insight, to have a platform or a team decide to block or flag a piece of media or a person or an action.
We're going to adhere to 5-minute rounds on the first round. I hope to come back to this line of questioning, and I apologize that others of you, Mr. Ahmed, you may have some comments as well, but in deference to my colleagues who have other commitments, I'm going to turn to the ranking member.
Thank you again, Mr. Chairman, and thanks to everybody for being here. Mr. Coleman, you raised in your opening statement what is, I think,